Once you see Tamon, you see IPv6. Huh?
Thank you very much, Cletus. He forgot a word in the title, the pathetic state of IPv6 Nigeria. So, what the other, you guys come up so we can do this together, right? I don't want to be the only one delivering the bad news.
Okay. Where do we stay?
Over there, yep. So for a bit of context, right, what is it that we're talking about? We all know that the internet is powered by IP addresses, V4, up till now for everyone. There are only 3.7 billion of them, right? And just in case you did not know, if you've been living under a rock for the last 5 years, it's practically finished. James just told you that the last remaining pool of free space in the world was at Afrinic, and we've gotten to the bottom. It means that if you wanted to start an ISP in any country on this continent, you don't have IPv4 space. So if you're not thinking about IPv6, you already lost the game before you started. Now, if IPv4 is the only game in town, here is the global distribution of IPv4 addresses per capita in the world, right? If you take the total number of IP addresses given to a continent divided by its population, you get average about 5 IP addresses per person in North America. And in Africa, you have 10 people having to share an IP address. We are not on the same internet. And anyone who doesn't understand why that's a problem is someone who's never faced the challenge where you come to an office, the internet is really, really slow. And then when you call the tech guy, they say, reboot it. They reboot the router, everything is really, really fast, and then 5 minutes later, it becomes really slow. That's because in the last 15 years, if you're in Africa, the game changed. 15 years ago, the problem was bandwidth, because NAT was sufficient. Now, bandwidth is no longer the problem. Ports to do NAT translations have become a problem. So we're seeing the need for what? More addresses. In Nigeria, what does that number stand at? 200 Nigerians have to share one IP address. So if you think 10 per half, 10 was bad, 200 Nigerians. So it is never, ever going to change, because we are not going to manufacture more IPv4 address space. Yeah, I know some of you might have heard about IP version 10, and all of those contorted means to want to extend IPv4. Not going to happen. So here's a problem. We've got, on one hand, the internet keeps growing. It's visiting every single person who wants to get on, right? There's Netflix all over the place. Every single television set you buy these days has an Ethernet port and a Wi-Fi port. Those things need addresses. And if IPv4 is the only game in town, we have what? Joker meets Batman, right? Unstoppable force meets an immovable object. So something has got to give. So there are 3 choices that we can do. First choice is we can buy more address space. I'll be happy if you tell me where we buy them from. We can keep sharing addresses, which we are already doing, or you can deploy IPv6. Here's my opinion. So let me start by asking my panelists, given these 3 choices, which one makes sense for your network and why? Let me start with Waleed.
Okay, my name is Wale. I'm from the academia, Federal University of Technology, Akure. We actually have a V6 block, and I was at the August edition of the Deployathon class by Afrenic. But before I came for the V6 class, we already had a lab at my place, so where we prototyped what we want to do, how our address plan is, and how moving forward on V6 is going to be like. We have a V4 block already, which we are running full scale. But deploying V6 was a problem for us when it comes to the telcos in Nigeria. We approached, I don't know why the telcos are not here actually. We approached MTN that we are ready to do V6 deployment. We got no answer. We approached Airtel. We got no answer. But later on we found out that they said the customers are not actually asking for V6 deployment. So the only alternative that we were left with was to go through Hurricane Electric. So we went through Hurricane Electric, submitted a letter of authorization, and within a few hours, we got our V6 up and running with the help of few guys from the community who assisted us. And running V6 for us has been very wonderful. Learning from what we've been taught by the Afrenic Deployathon and doing things with the IPAM so that by the time you have your V6 broken out, we have a /48 and we were advised to always stay by the nibble, and we did that, and it's been a very wonderful experience for us. So we have a V6, we've deployed it, and it's running. Though we still have few difficulties on the network, but we hope to actually overcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Emmanuel ngNOG from the University of Benin. We have IPv4, but we see that the IPv4 we have and changing it to our private IP address is not sufficient, so we can't go around. So it's only some selected places we're using the public V4. Then when it comes to V6, by the time we applied for V6, we are not of good standing. So we asked to go and settle up our bill first before we could apply for V6. But being that it's only very few persons in my team who are familiar with IPv6, because I've been teaching IPv6 in the Cisco Academy, using it to configure routers, teach students. So it wasn't much of a problem for me. But the other member of the team, how can we deploy and support something we don't understand? And secondly, if we deploy IPv6, that means everybody will be visible to the internet because they, on their own thinking, that NAT is a form of security. I try to convince them NAT is not a form of security. You have NAT, you still have your malware, you still have your viruses coming to the network. So it's not a form of security. So it's to encourage the users to go and get antivirus. So we've come across that stage now. We've made requests for IPv6. We're hoping that maybe before the end of this conference, we'll get the requests approved and we'll start the deployment of IPv6 in our network.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Awal Hassan Tata from also the Academia, Bayero University, Kano, from the northern part of Nigeria. We have both IPv4 and IPv6. We've had it from last year. Actually, I started this battle for over 5 years to acquire global resources for the university. But then anytime I get to the point of payment, I meet a stumbling block. No matter how much I try to explain to management the importance of getting global IP, they just wouldn't understand. Until it got to a point where we needed to deploy some services in the university and we needed global IPs, and we didn't have any. And they asked me, why didn't you deploy these services? I said, the same global IP I've been battling with you guys to provide for us for over 5 years is the stumbling block now. I said, how much is this thing costing? I said, look at all the invoices I gave you all this while. They said, let's just pay immediately. I said, no, you can't pay immediately because the ticket has been closed. We have to start a new ticket all through. Now, because of they have now realized the importance of us having global resources. Immediately, they were the ones that were on my neck to get us global resources like yesterday. We were able to get it. And luckily, we got both IPv4 and IPv6. We recently deployed the IPv4, and the entire university is running on the IPv4 block. However, we've not done the IPv6. One, because the subscriber that we are subscribed to, that's our internet service provider, claims that they do not support IPv6, which is sad, really. And we are left with the agony of having to do 6-to-4 tunneling. And of course, I'm not too comfortable with that. Not that based on security matters, but I look at it as me having to now go through the provider outside to reach out to resources that probably are going to be inside, like going round, just like we are trying to avoid by the implementation of IXPs. In any case, if that's the only option that we have, we'll go by it. But then I need to have my staff get educated on IPv6 before we delve into it. So that's where we are in IPv6 deployment. Thank you.
Thank you. So obviously, everyone is sharing addresses, doing that because for most network engineers, they learned networking and NAT was a part of networking. And so it's just stuck in their minds that the way we build networks is to use private IPv4 addresses and then do NAT. And so there are cases where entire organizations have blocks of V4 space they're not using. Because what? NAT. Well, if you're in Africa, you don't need to buy IP addresses. But if you wanted to, I want you to imagine there are accountants and CFOs who still have problems because I want to see the thing I'm buying. And you're sending him an email from some company in some island. I'm supposed to pay $2,500 for this. You're going to have a lot more problems. Therefore, deploying IPv6 should be your only option. So, bad, Facebook-like on deploy IPv6, right? Now, in case you're wondering, this isn't new. This is 20 years old in the making. 30% of traffic as seen by Google today is over IPv6. So as we speak, there are nothing less than 500 million people all over the world that use IPv6 only. So it's not new, okay? Now, that's the map. I don't know about you guys, but Africa, we are supposed to be the black continent. I don't understand this red. Black, yeah, this red, I don't understand, right? That shows global IPv6 from the perspective of users. And as you can see, Africa is doing really, really bad. And we'd like to change that. So, what is the status in Nigeria? Let's see. Only 35.7% of the transit providers into Nigeria can provide IPv6. Pathetic, right? What's happening? Of all the IPv6 prefixes that have been gotten, only 17% of them have been announced. Mind you, getting an IPv6 prefix in this region is free of charge. People have gotten it, and they're not announcing it. So, why so? First of all, you have providers who do not have IPv6. And that's sad to say because I can attest to what they're saying. My team and I, we've been working with more than, say, 20 plus operators in this country. And the biggest block is operator X, we don't have IPv6. And when you send them an email, oh, we have plans for it next year. Which contradicts something that Mr. Warranty just said. On every conference, on all continents of this world, you have someone from marketing say, oh, the reason we're not doing IPv6 is because no customer is asking for it. That's just not true. Because in this country, they approve. We've sent a list of at least 15 customers, paying customers, who say, we want IPv6. And what was the answer? Planning for it next year. So that's not true. So, content, 58.6% ready. Don't get excited. This is not Nigerian content. This is Cloudflare, Google, Facebook hosted in Nigeria. Don't get excited. And that's why I say it is pathetic, because there's 0%, and on a scale of 1 to 100, Nigeria does the pathetic 9.5% deployment. That needs to change. So, when I say Nigeria, I know the carry last, right? You all know that guy. So if you could, that's sarcasm, right? Nigeria did carry last in this case. So how do we fix this? So, after training more than 10,000 engineers from every single country on this continent, we sent out this survey. What is your number one deployment challenge? And as you see, almost everything that they said was also reflected here. Number one, competence. I don't have the skill, I don't have the confidence to do it by myself. Number two is management. Management goes from every single thing, it's not a priority, I don't have equipment to train people, I don't have the budget to train people, everything that has to do with management. And lots of other, small things. So I'm going to ask my panelists, for you guys, what was the biggest challenge for you starting your IPv6 project?
From my own point of view, was actually competence. But later on, when I found the deployathon class, I was like, this is an opportunity for me to learn. I didn't bother consulting the management because I know what I want. So I went out for it, came for the deployathon class. I think I actually attended 2, one by your session and by Stephen's session, and that was it. And after that, we found a way around it and we deployed.
Competence.
Yeah, for me, the greatest challenge is management because, one, for you to travel for training, management has to approve. They have to also make fund available for you to travel. And second, when it comes to having AX number, because you need an AX number before you could announce your IPv6, and you must pay for it, the fee. So, and they have to be approved by management. So I would say more than 37% my case was on management.
For me, the greatest challenge, I will confess, is actually competence. Competence, not on my own part, but on the part of people I work with. I can't stand alone deploying everything. My team has to be part of it as well. And they are still having some sort of issues accommodating or being comfortable with global IPv4 itself. You understand? They are used to nothing.
I know. I know.
So that's.
Thank you very much for that perspective. And this is the challenge we face. We all think that learning and deploying are two sides of the same coin, right? That's what we think. But that's the reality. That's unfair competition, right? You know how this story ends. This is not in the Bible. You know how this story ends 100% of the time, right? And that is why we realized at feeling that it's just not training. Training on its own isn't going to cut it. Because the biggest myth that people have is that if I just had information, I would change. We all know that we are overweight. Do we stop eating sugar? No. We need to do something differently. And so what's that thing that we do? So, for a long time, I would get emails like this after I do a training. Maybe sometimes 6 months later, sometimes a year later. Someone would tell me, hey, Tamon, I'm at the end of my IPv6 proof of concept. It was difficult, but finally getting it done. And so we thought, how do we scale this? Where we can have a process in place to get people from learning to actually deploying faster. And so that's why we came up with the idea of a deployathon and an IPv6 help desk. So the idea is go from curiosity to deployment. Of course, you can never escape the fact that you need to train people. So the very first thing we do is that we provide training. It used to be face-to-face training for a long time, but we are toning down on that. Because, again, training, especially if you don't give people, don't throw people off the cliff, it's just going to come to the next training, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then I get irritated. So, first thing we do training, live, through webinars and online. So, that's going to solve the challenge of I don't have money to send people for training. At Afrinic, we're going to provide the best training for you free of charge. Now, that solves one part of the competence problem, that of knowledge. But the second part, confidence, still is there. And that's where the second thing comes in. The deployment help desk. If you want to deploy IPv6 and you don't know how to start, there's a form on our website you fill, and someone will hold you step by step with your network as an example. Do this, do that, do that. We do that remotely through an online session. After doing that for about 1 year, we realized that there's still something magical about meeting face-to-face. And then we came up with the idea of a deployathon. What's a deployathon? It's a hackathon for deployment, right? And so, through this, we are able to have people come in with no IPv6 prefix, and the third day, leave with IPv6 actually running on their networks. I mean, some of you at the last deployathon were there. And so the next 3 days, you're going to be having something like this, a deployathon, where the objective is, this is not training. We set the boundary high. If you want training, that's a $5 problem. We're not solving $5 problems. When you have a $5 million problem, then we talk at that level, okay? So, that's what a help desk session looks like. So, on the other side, there's an entire team on in another country, and then this is Stephen and this is Bashir, they're in the crowd, and they're helping them step by step. What do I need to do? Which routers do I need to touch? Which protocols? Who should I call? Because sometimes you realize it's just that first email. And so what we found is that when we go out and do deployathons, people tell us, they just like the fact that someone was able to tell me step A, B, C, D, and then they could figure out the rest by themselves. So that's what a deployathon looks like, face-to-face. And that's the kind of result that you can get if you come to a deployathon. You can come in with no IPv6 prefix, and by the third day, you have live traffic from your network. So, I think one of the best performing operators in Nigeria with respect to IPv6 is Glo. They're the only ones that I'm aware that can connect you to IPv6. Half of their customers came through to IPv6 through a deployathon, something like this. And so you see, it is not that difficult. He will tell you it's not that difficult if you have someone to guide you, so you're not second-guessing yourself. So, you all know that guy, right? You haven't met his Nigerian evil twin, right? He says, you can dread it, you can run from it, but the IPv4 apocalypse arrives. Or should I say, here they are. So, final words from my panelists. So, what advice would you give to someone who is still dragging their feet?
I think the first stage is being here is the first stage. We should just make use of the opportunity, make the request, and if possible, get management or put the approval necessary so that at least we can all get all the steps to start. We could just create maybe one segment of our network, try it out there, let's see how it works. If it's fine, then we can just replicate that to other segments of the network.
For me, first of all, I would like to call on the chief executive officers around among us here, there's a very beautiful opportunity knocking on the door right now. Tomorrow we're going to have the last leg of this conference and our workshop starts. And one of the tracks is actually dealing with IPs and with speciality in IP version 6. This is an opportunity for those of us that want to learn and get a grasp of what IPv6 can do for them. That is one. Secondly, we shouldn't be scared of going into the unknown, because that's what people think IPv6 is. IPv6 is regarded as an unknown. But if you are scared of going into the unknown, you can never prosper. It's just the trick behind it. So IPv6 has come to stay. It's either you follow the bandwagon or you perish. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I like your last part about, don't be afraid of going into the unknown, because if you've grown your entire life running a network on IPv4 and NAT, you are like the golden fish that was raised in the bowl, right? It thinks that the world is a swirl of water every 5 minutes, until one day it meets a fish from the ocean. And that fish from the ocean will tell you of a world where you can swim for miles and miles and miles and not have to turn. What do you think the fish in the bowl is going to say? You're lying. You're lying, right? Because it cannot possibly conceive of a world of so much abundance. Don't be the fish in the bowl.